This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation.
But this is the first time in my professional career that everybody, 100% of us, are consciously aware we are engaged in a change initiative.
Yeah, everything. I mean, COVID caused us all to go through change, right? At the same time, but our experiences were so different.
Facing these unprecedented times in isolation is pure insanity.
Today, we welcome Milan Batinich. Milan draws from 20 years of contact center operational and sales management experience from American Express, Westcor, and other organizations. Milan holds several certifications with the Predictive Index and Stanford University School of Medicine for human behaviors and psychology for high performance. Milan is the founder of the Milan Batinich Group and Milan Motivates, a professional development and motivational speaking company that guides individuals in their journey to find joy, purpose, and energy in their work. Milan is a dad, avid cyclist, coach, and storm chaser. Milan says, I had a friend give me sound advice a couple of years ago. She said, don't let loyalty keep you from your destiny. And that has stuck with me while I begin this journey as an entrepreneur. It's important to find work that brings us joy, our Ikigai. The work that is what we love to do, what we are good at, what the world needs, and what we can get paid to do. Over the past few years, Milan has spent a part of his career speaking to organizations and at conferences. Through this experience, he has learned what his Ikigai is. Milan finds helping organizations and people find their Ikigai, or destiny, is exciting, and he is passionate doing this type of work. He continues to say, I knew this was my destiny due to 4 reasons. Number 1, speaking brings me joy. Being able to help others find their joy in the type of work that they do brings me joy. Number 2, speaking brings me purpose. Knowing that by providing my insights and experiences can help others find joy gives me purpose. It is my mission to help humankind discover who they are and what they should be doing. Knowing that I can assist others in their journey leads me to number 3. Number 3, speaking brings me energy. Anytime you are in a role that you thoroughly enjoy will bring you energy. When I speak and facilitate workshops, I am energized. Anytime you are doing work that is not a good fit for who you are naturally will cost you energy. Number 4, speaking brings me peace. Knowing that I am doing what I was born to do results in an inner peace that is hard to explain. I'm excited to help others become self-aware of their needs and help them discover their destiny.
As I hear that, it's fascinating, Adrian, that we approached him because of his expertise in talent strategy, in training, and in the predictive index. And hearing that bio and his passion makes me see how he became an expert in the first place. He desired to truly help people have better work experience, produce better results, and fulfill their destiny.
And we see that in the conversation that we have with him. He has such a breadth of case studies to share with us, and he just draws from the stories and is able to bring us to those situations and explain those stories in such an animated and motivated way. It just makes you want to take it all in. It really shows us how he does live into his Ikigai. Welcome, Milan Batinich.
Good morning, Milan. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Milan. Thanks. We're so happy to have you here with us today. So let's open up. If you would just tell us a little bit about your background. I know your focus has been for many years on bringing the right talent to the right work. So can you just tell us a little bit about how you go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question to start off with. So my background, I was in operations for contact centers for about a decade and then transitioned into staffing. One of my first jobs in college was through a staffing firm. So I always thought it would be interesting to help other people find jobs. And so during the last recession, would have been 2011, took a job with a staffing firm, and then moved around a little bit, within that industry. And in 2013, took a role on with a company out of Chicago that utilized a tool, a behavioral assessment tool, cognitive assessment tool that I had never heard of before, and learned more about that. It took me from when I started that position in 2014. It took me about 6 months to drink the Kool-Aid. I'll call it, because I was like, I've taken personality tests before and all of that, and I think they're all the same, and whatever, I'll take it. I was not a believer. And then eventually I was hiring a sales rep for my company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I had the person complete the assessment, and my manager at the time, who has been using Predictive Index tool since 1989, he told me, he said, as you expand your territory and you grow with the company, you can hire whoever you want. But let me see their profile first, and I'll tell you if there's any red flags. So I had a sales rep I wanted to hire. I showed him the results, and he said, I know I told you you can hire whoever you want, but please don't hire this person. And I'm like, well, you said I can hire whoever I want, and I'm pretty stubborn. So I'm like, I think I'm going to hire them. And he said, well, here's what's going to happen. He said, within 90 days, you're going to turn them over. You're going to let them go, or they're going to quit for 3 specific reasons. He said, number 1, they're a rookie to the industry, and you're going to explain to them how to do their job until you're blue in the face. They're going to smile and nod, telling you they understand, and they're not going to do it. They're going to do their own thing. He said, number 2, because they do their own thing and don't take your advice, they're going to be underperforming. And number 3, he's like, based on the profile of your ops manager that they'll be working side by side with, they will not get along. And your ops manager is very valuable to the organization, and she's going to be very unhappy if you hire the sales rep. So he said, within 90 days, those 3 things will be apparent. So within 6 weeks, all 3 were like a flashing sign in my face. So I did end up hiring the person, and within 6 weeks, I told him, I think you were right. And I ended up, having to terminate their employment for the exact 3 reasons. And that's when I became a believer on psychometrics and human behaviors and measuring those behaviors and people's drives and all of that. And then fast forward a few years later, I became a believer. I've been using the whole idea of measuring people's drives, which will predict their needs, and their behaviors are a response to those needs, for the last almost 10 years now. And throughout the course of the last few years, I became a certified trainer in human behaviors. I actually went back to school, became certified through Stanford University in human behaviors and how to coach people for high performance. And then also most recently, I started my own motivational speaking business where I talk to corporations, leadership teams, schools about finding their a Japanese concept, finding their Ikigai. So what are they passionate about? What type of work will where they'll find true joy? What's the type of work that'll really bring out the joy and passion in their life? So that's kind of a history of who I am and what I've gone through, and still 10 years later, still a very strong believer in being able to measure people's behaviors and being able to manage them and coach them and have relationships with them based on who they are.
Well, thank you for that, Milan. And as I heard that story of your first success with saying 3 reasons this person isn't a fit based on people data, my mind went to the cost of turnover and the frustration. So the economic cost is easy to show, but the frustration of keep hiring the wrong people. So what do you think we can tell people about getting a better strategy for recruiting, since you're in the staffing business to begin with, to getting the right person in the right seat?
Yeah, well, number 1, you can't manage what you don't measure. So being able to measure who people are and the type of work they would enjoy, I think, is a necessity. From my experience, I actually worked with an organization down in Austin, Texas, where they were an inbound customer service center So they're taking inbound calls. They had about 60 employees, but they were seeing 90% turnover. And which, I mean, out of 60 employees, their attrition, their
Constant.
turnover,
Huge problem.
yeah, 54 people a year. And so what we did was we evaluated, well, what does the job entail? And what they do is they're an inbound call center that sells jewelry. So they have their own TV channel, and it's a reverse auction type of style where they'll start out on TV and they'll say, we have 50 of this type of beautiful necklace for $50 a piece. And then when I say reverse auction, what happens is then they come back later and they say, we have 20 left, but now it's only $30. And then we have 5 left and now it's only $15. So people are waiting by their phone to call. The problem was they were hiring individuals that were inbound customer service, where all they do is process orders or help people on the phone, assist them. What they really needed was more of a sales approach, salesperson type of profile, because when the people called in, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, you were too late. We sold out. Or it was great news. We have that necklace. And then there was opportunities to upsell and cross-sell. We also think the earrings that go with the necklace would be perfect. The bracelets, the ring, whatever it might be, would be a great add-on. The problem was all of those agents were their expectation was to sell, upsell, and cross-sell. But they weren't hiring agents that were willing to, nor were comfortable taking risk, being more risk tolerant, and asking people to buy more. They just processed the order and then moved on to the next caller. So what we did was we identified what's the right type of profile, and it was almost the exact opposite. They went from hiring an operator type of profile, so very patient, high formality, low extroversion, low dominance. And they completely flipped it to more of a persuader and captain type of profile, people who weren't afraid to ask for the sale and ask for somebody to buy more. So Tom, to go back to your question, what we saw was over the course of the first 6 months, and then we expanded to 12 months, not only did they triple their revenue because they were hiring agents that would sell, upsell, and cross-sell their jewelry products, but they also saw their annual attrition go from 90% down to 14.9%. Wow. And then they were able to reduce their nesting period attrition. So nesting period is from when the person starts, goes through training, and then learns on the job. So the first about 3 months or so, 90% of their 90% attrition happened within the first 3 months, and they were able to lower that to about 4%. And so what they figured is it probably saved them, not only did they triple their revenue, but it saved them at least between $500,000 to $1 million in having to pay for attrition. So having to place ads, recruiters' time, interview candidates, all of those things. So they figured they probably saved between $500,000 and $1 million that first year. Plus they tripled their sales revenue in that first year by hiring people that would be a natural fit for upselling and cross-selling.
So it's understanding the work that leads to success, and there's data for that, best practices, and then positioning the person who is wired to most meet that challenge.
Yeah, it's almost like matchmaking. So you know exactly what the job entails and what the requirements of the job are behaviorally and cognitively, what's needed for the job for that person to be successful. And then it's almost marrying the two. Then you find the employee that would be the ideal fit based on who they naturally are, and then match them together. Exactly.
I'm reminded of some early organizational development work that I've done without the benefit of people data. And we scoured through job descriptions and role descriptions and looked at the boxes, and then looked at the names and the resumes or the performance reviews of the people we had, put them in the box, right? But nowhere in there did we have data of, is this the work this person is really suited to do or enjoys doing, where they will be engaged. And it makes me think of, just when you think about the engagement results for that story you've told, like those employees had to be more engaged because they were doing work that was best suited for them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And, to piggyback on that, doing the work that's best suited for them. I think of another example in a client in Elgin, Illinois, where they had two individuals, both sat in human resources. They had a payroll clerk who every week processed payroll, very methodical type of work. And they had someone else who was a corporate recruiter. So a lot of variety, a lot of recruiting for different types of roles for their organization. But both the recruiter and the payroll clerk were subpar performers. So they were below average on performance. So when they assessed both of them and they completed job targets and identifying, okay, what's the best type of profile for this specific role, they found that the recruiter, the person that was in the recruiter role may be a better fit as a payroll clerk, and vice versa. The payroll clerk may be a better fit as a recruiter. So they did an experiment and they approached both the payroll clerk and recruiter and said, hey, we want you to be able to back one another up since you're both in human resources, and we want to cross-train you. So they took a couple months and trained the payroll clerk on how to recruit, trained the recruiter on how to do payroll and all of that. And then about a month later, as they were kind of doing a mixture of both jobs, the payroll clerk went to their manager, and the recruiter also went to the HR manager. And they asked, can we just switch jobs? Because the payroll clerk said, I really enjoy the aspects of recruiting, the picking up the phone and calling people, phone screening people, a lot of variety, a lot of fast paced. And the person who was the recruiter said, I really like handling payroll for the organization. The methodical type of work, the steady type of work, not a lot of variety, not a lot of pressure on me. It's the same work each week. And so the company was like, yeah, because that was their goal. They were hoping, instead of needing to replace both of those individuals because of their poor performance, they would be able to find another fit within the organization for them. And that's exactly what they did. And they didn't even have to recommend it. Both people said, I would love to do that other person's job.
Yeah. Wow.
So it helps career development as well as hiring. And where the classic that I always saw is they took the top salesperson and promoted them to sales manager, not recognizing it's different skills. Suddenly they're sitting over a P&L, and they'd rather have a root canal than sit over a P&L. They want to get out with the customer. And this was the promotion. And so we want to keep our eye on how they can advance by doing greater work, but still aligned.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And my recommendation is always either 85-15 or 90-10, meaning if you're doing a lot of volume hiring for a specific role, you typically will want to hire 85 to 90% of the best fit profile for that role. And then you want to hire 10 to 15% for that next level up. Mm-hmm. Not saying part of the 85, 90% couldn't move into that role, next level up. But if you hire all 100% for that specific role, it's going to be much more difficult to identify people for maybe a supervisor or manager type of role in the future.
Mm-hmm. Some built-in succession planning
there. A long view.
Long view, yes.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the one-on-one relationships or the team relationships based on people data? So, what we've talked about a lot is the right fit for the right role. But how does that people data also help us just to interact with each other or interact on a team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it has to do, so the way I always talk about it is very similar to any relationship we have in our life. Whether it's with my child, with my significant other, with my parents, my sister, whomever it is, if I understand who that person is and what they need in order for our interaction to be productive and in order for them to be happy at the end of it, and if they know what I need, I believe needs to be compromise on both sides, but both sides need to be aware of what they themselves need and how their styles are impacting the other party and what the other party needs. So I think those three things: understanding yourself, understanding the other person you're communicating with, and then also understanding how who you are is going to come across to the other person, being self-aware of that. And then I think there's just compromise. So Adrian, if I know who you naturally are and I know who I naturally am, then I can adapt some of my behaviors or stretch myself a little bit to fit what you need within our communication. And vice versa. If you know who I am, then you can adapt. Say, for instance, if I know that You have a very high attention to detail, whereas I don't. Send me bullet points. I'm perfectly okay with that. Then I'll stretch myself. If I'm going to send you an email, instead of sending bullet points, I'll stretch myself to send you maybe more paragraphs or more detailed information, or more clarity around the information. Where naturally I would just say, here's 2 bullet points. And you may say, well, this is a great start. Where's the rest of the information? So really just being able to adapt and work on those relationships and meeting somewhere in the middle. So if I add a little more detail and you send me a little bit less detail, everybody will be happy and we're all working well together.
Go ahead, Adrian.
I saw you were going to ask me another question. Well, and of course I lost my train of thought, but what you described, makes me think about that you don't, I was reflecting on, you don't need to not be you.
Right.
But there's an element of, we want to stretch, right? Like, I mean, we don't want to show up completely differently than how we would naturally behave, but in appreciation of another style, thinking a manager to a direct report, it's not too much more effort for me to give you more than bullet points, if that's what you like, right? Or to save the detail and give you the bullet points, if that's what you like. There's just more of that awareness and understanding so that you can stretch for the betterment of that relationship.
Right. And I remember years ago, I managed a contact center in Madison for American Express, and I had about 60 employees, give or take 50, 60 employees. And I had a management style. And this was before I understood human behaviors or how to adapt or learning who my employees are. My mindset was, well, this is my management style, deal with it, which is very poor. And I know that now. So I would share a communication with all the call center agents. And, probably 2/3 of them would be very motivated. Be like, wow, that was great. I'm really motivated to get back on the phones and do my job. And then probably half of the remaining were indifferent. And then the last piece or last remaining employees would say, wow, I hate this guy. I need to update my resume and look for a new job. I can't believe you communicate with me that way. If I would have known or had a tool like this and understood people and understood my employees, then I can adapt where, okay, I understand for 40 of you, you're going to be motivated by this communication style. 10 of you, how can I adjust my communication style to fit you? And then the remaining 10, how can I adjust or adapt my communication style even more to fit what it is that you need? So yeah, absolutely. Being able to understand, the other individuals. And I think I would have been more successful that way versus, nope, this is who I am. There's a quote, and I don't know who this quote comes from, but one of my favorite quotes is, managing every employee the same way is like giving every employee the same size shoes. Just not going to work.
That. And having 3 children, I know that's true with children. Before I had children, I said, treat all kids the same. That would have been a disaster because I had one that you had to say, take a break, hit the volleyball around, have some milk. She was doing tomorrow's homework. And another one, I had to chase her around and say, have you done your homework yet? They're just different. And so be just, treat them the same way in love, but it's a disaster if you treat them the same way behaviorally.
Right.
Can you think of an example that helps to understand? We've seen all the statistics about the cost and the buzzword like quiet quitting, employees that aren't engaged. Can you give an example of using people data to increase measurable engagement?
Oh, that is a great question. We're getting deep now. Harvard Business Review, talks about how from the ages of 25 to 52, an individual in America will change jobs between 6 and 7 times, just because, and the main driving reason, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics, the number one reason is they're not being managed appropriately. The second reason is the job fit is a mismatch for who they naturally are. And then
what relates back to what we were just talking about. If they're not a fit, they're going to disengage if they don't leave. What are a few principles that you teach that helps frame engagement better?
So it amazes me, even in 2023, how many organizations believe extrinsic motivation is the way to engage employees. And when I say extrinsic motivation, those external motivators, whether it be money, prizes, gift cards. I remember companies having beer and wine on tap, thinking that's going to motivate employees and engage employees.
Foosball table.
Yeah, foosball table, scooters, beanbag chairs, over the years, just seeing all these different things. I remember trying one company a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic started. They had a pool table and they took a piece of plexiglass and put it over top of the pool table, and they used it as an additional lunchroom table because nobody ever played pool anymore on their pool table. So all these extrinsic motivators, when really it's the intrinsic. So, an example of an intrinsic motivator, and really those motivators is what drives employee engagement, is, the motivation to be challenged. Now, some people have it, some people don't. So it's really using people data to measure what motivates you. What motivates you, Tom, may be different than what motivates Adrian, maybe different than what motivates me. But as an example, to be challenged is one of my motivators. I enjoy being challenged and being able to try to solve a problem. So knowing that, an organization, the way they could manage me to have me be highly engaged is giving me opportunities to maybe think outside the box. You give me opportunities to be able to be challenged and try to solve problems, because that will be more fulfilling for me than if I solve an issue and they give me a $10 Starbucks gift card or whatever the dollar amount.
And some people like public rewards and other people like private rewards.
That's right. And actually, and that's a great point you bring up. If you recognize someone who prefers private recognition, if you recognize them publicly, it actually has the opposite effect on them.
Embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. Exactly. And they're thinking, why would he or she do that? Why would my manager do that to me?
So we universalize the rewards instead of positioning them against what those people are driven by and motivated.
Exactly. The golden rule is treat other people the way you want to be treated, but the way I want to be treated may not be how you want to be treated. So we really need to live by the platinum rule. Which is to treat others the way they need and they want to be treated. Because the way I want to be treated, if I treat everyone the way I want to be treated, the people that have that are similar to me, naturally similar to me, will eat it up. They may receive motivation from that. But if everyone I'm talking to or everyone on my team is the opposite of me, they're going to be like, Milan, why are you treating us this way? This sounds like something you would enjoy. Like, you're right. So wouldn't you? No, they wouldn't, because they need to be treated. And so using people data to understand, okay, what motivates you? Because what motivates you may not motivate your colleague or the partner sitting next to you at the desk at the office. So it's really identifying what are those intrinsic, internal motivations of each person, and then really giving people those opportunities. Like if somebody gave me a project where it's just going to be methodical work over long term, I would pull my hair out. I would go crazy. I'd be looking out the window throughout the day because I'm not being challenged. That's not a way to motivate me. So using that people data to be able to figure out what's driving each person, and then let's use that to motivate them. And then through that motivation, they'll be highly engaged. Engaged employees have an emotional commitment to the work they're doing or to the organization, to the team, to their manager. And because of that, they are going to give out this extra discretionary effort. They're not going to do what's minimally required for them to keep their job. They're going to give out this extra effort because they're committed to the job, because it's a fit for who they naturally are. They're highly engaged in the work they do.
I imagine this sweet spot where you have a project, there's work to be done, and there's multiple roles to play on that project, and each individual on that team takes on a role that is perfectly suited for them, right? Dream team. Do you have an example of either? I'll give you an option: either a nightmare team where that didn't play out, or a dream team where that did perfectly play out, either in spite of or because of people data that you had or didn't have.
Well, thank you for the option. You probably could tell from our brief conversation so far, you could probably tell what my natural tendency tends to be. So I like to have options and variety. Thank you. Thank you both for that. So I'm going to use an example of where it did work out. So I can think of a specific team that I worked with and still work with, where people are broken down. When we look at a dream team, people are broken down into 4 different categories. Could be process and precision, results and discipline, innovation and agility, or teamwork and employee experience. And so a lot of times what I'll see with startups or companies that are really growth focused is they'll have a lot of people within innovation and agility. Problem is sometimes when you have a lot of people in innovation and agility, they'll come up with outside the box ideas, very creative, solution oriented ideas. They'll get it to 80%, 90% completed. Then they'll see a shiny object or a purple squirrel, and then they'll stop working on this project and go work on something brand new. Well, I was working with this team that they were in growth mode. So a lot of times if it's a developed company and a large company, maybe not in growth mode, but more of maintaining, then maybe the leader is going to be more results and discipline or process and precision. So I was working with a company that was their leadership team, majority of their leadership team was innovation and agility, which is great. They had all these great ideas and ways to grow the company and ways to expand and all of these great ideas. They're like, the problem is we're not growing. And it's like, well, who on your team falls within, say, process and precision that can see it through? Because you can come up with a great idea as somebody who's innovative and agile, but then you need somebody to refine your idea, poke holes in it, maybe figure out, well, hey, this is a great outside the box idea, but here's a couple issues you may encounter. So somebody who's really disciplined and focused on the results that can then hand it off to someone who's very much into process and precision that can make sure it gets implemented. And so this team realized, because they were expanding their staff and hiring and all of that, they looked at, well, everybody except for one person is within innovation and agility. There's 7 of us in innovation and agility. So then the recommendation was, well, as you hire people, which they did, you need somebody in results and discipline, somebody in process and precision, because you guys you're cooking. You have ideas coming out every week, these amazing ideas, but then they get set off to the side because you find something new to work on. You don't have somebody who can refine your idea or poke holes in it, and you don't have anyone to implement your idea. So then it falls off to the side. Another example that's not super work related, but even my own company, we're a 5-year-old outside of my speaking business. I work for a company that's about 5.5 years old. When we started, we had people in innovation and agility. We had 1 or 2 people down in results and discipline and 1 in process and precision. And every year, those of us, I'm in innovation and agility. Those of us in that quadrant, we're like, oh, as a company, it would be fun. We should do fantasy football. And the first year went by, October comes, halfway through the football season, and we're like, oh, we didn't see it through. Next year, oh, we didn't see it through.
We didn't have the steps needed to actually.
You didn't have the right leader on that fantasy football.
Exactly. So finally, we realized we are not getting this done after 3 years. And so last year we started off small because, football season may be 4 months long. So we're like, let's start off on a smaller scale. And so we did March Madness tournament last year for college basketball. And guess who ran it? Someone that was
not you.
Not me, not in my group either. It was someone down in results and discipline that could build it, put it together.
Yeah.
She took the idea and she's like, I love basketball. I'd be happy to head this up, because she's like, I'm told every year we're doing fantasy football and it never happens. So I will make sure I see this through to the finish line. And it was perfect.
It's a great example. It's a micro example that recurs all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, these conversations go very quickly and we're almost out of time. You reminded me when you complimented Adrian of giving you some options. So for your last question, tell us what your profile is, and then say, I work best when, and just give us 2 or 3 combinations without going into the science or any of that, so we can get a feel for that.
All right, perfect. So as everyone is perfect just the way they are, I am a persuader, about 2.5 sigma wide. So I am an individual who is proactive, who likes a lot of variety, and is very socially driven. So I need to be around people. And so anytime I get on these types of calls, if people don't have their camera on, I always ask if they can turn their camera on, because I need to see faces.
And you got a great smile. So
thank
we want
you.
camera.
Thank you. So very socially driven. Yes.
So that just helps if I'm hiring him to know without knowing
Yeah.
all of the details he can get. Don't sit him in a room with a spreadsheet all day. Maybe he can do it for a day, but he's not going to hang around very long.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for
Great
having me.
stories. Thank you for sharing.
Definitely.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.